we mentioned it to you, an exciting day today. 20 years ago, South Africa's first democratic elections, and it's exciting as we're bringing our guests into studio. Now, later on, music guests, but this time round, I must say, two important people that we managed to, bring their time and bring them into our chairs. Tony Leon, former Member of Parliament and also a South African ambassador, and Gasant Abarder, it's great to see you in our chair, editor of the Cape Times. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here, and on this important day as well as we look to voting. Mr. Gasant, would you agree? I mean, there's figures that go out there. A recent survey was released and showing that the outcome of a national election, that the ANC to take just under 64% of the vote. That's what they're saying. That the DA would take just under 24%. EFF nonetheless would take 4.7, and other parties 7.7. So spread out like that. Would you agree with those figures? Is that what we're looking at?
That sounds a bit sounds spot on from the pre-election opinion polls, but I think we need to watch the EFF carefully. I think they're going to be the surprise package this elections. In the very short time, Julius Malema and company have been able to mobilize people without proper branch structures. We saw on Sunday they brought in a massive 30,000 people into a stadium. And whether that popular support translates into votes is another story, but I think they're the party to watch this elections.
Mr. Leon, it's great to have you in the chair, and it's the first time that I'm able to speak to you, but being an ambassador for South Africa, I mean, we're having a look now. Yesterday, I had a call from one of the parties that said, you know, remember, it's voting day tomorrow. So they called me. So it seems like everyone's campaigning, you know, everyone's being excited about today. Could we see any surprises in the provinces, keeping in mind the poll that Katlego just mentioned?
Well, I could probably address it more in my capacity as a former DA leader than I can as the previous ambassador, because ambassadors shouldn't, and I certainly didn't get involved in party politics or forecasting. But, you know, having been involved intensely in all the previous democratic elections, except this one I've sat out, I think that the provincial tally at the end of the day is going to be more or less what it is now. I think there are going to be 8 ANC provinces, and there's going to be 1 DA province, the Western Cape. That being said, I think the percentages are going to shift, in some cases quite dramatically. I think there's going to be a big fall in the ANC Gauteng support. Bear in mind they got 65% in Gauteng last time. I think they're going to drop into the 50s. I don't think below 50. The Northern Cape is impossible to poll. So you see a lot of polls about the Northern Cape, just simply the population spread, because a few people spread in an enormous area. And I know it well from having had to campaign there, how far you have to go just to speak to a few voters. It's difficult to tell, but most voters are concentrated in Kimberley, and I don't see the ANC losing the Northern Cape. I think they'll come down somewhat, and I think Cope, which I think was the official opposition there last time, will lose their status. In fact, I think Cope will lose their status in the Eastern Cape and elsewhere as the official opposition, to be replaced by the DA. So I think at the end of this, you will see a much more consolidated opposition behind the DA, with, of course, as has been said, the exception of the EFF. The EFF will be the third force in the new parliament, and I think they will actually do better in this election, nationally at any rate, I don't know about provincially, than the polls suggest. I would think they could get close to 7 or 8%. Now, what that does to the future politics of South Africa, of course, is open to question, but that's a question for the day after tomorrow, not for today.
Speaking of which, where does Achang and Cope stand in all of this? I mean, you mentioned and touched on it briefly.
Well, I think they're both going to do very badly today, quite frankly. I think Mamphela Ramphele had a golden moment, an extraordinary moment, actually, of something I didn't understand why the DA did what it did. It's got its own crop of leaders. It offered on a silver platter, effectively, the leadership of the party to her. She ummed and ahed, accepted and then retracted, and in so doing, when she finally pulled out, she did herself an enormous amount of damage and lost a lot of credibility. And I think that's going to be reflected in the polls. On the other hand, you know, she will have some representation in Parliament, but it'll be at the low end.
Gasant, I'm keeping in mind, and you know, all our viewers, we always say that in 10 people, 2 people are strongly involved in politics and always interested, and it's probably the one conversation that comes up when people speak internationally. In terms of voting, for ordinary people like us, that's never been immersed in politics as such, how important for you as an editor of a newspaper is it to vote?
I think it's quite important, and I think you've touched on a crucial issue there. I think the theme and testing the temperature out there with people, the theme with this elections has almost been the indecision of people. And I always joke with my staff that my indecision is final. We were talking about selecting front page leads. But I think with this election, it's been a real feature that people have said that they're going to walk into those polling booths not knowing. Now, you're right to talk about this 2 out of 10. The people who are actively engaged as citizens of this country will know who to vote for when the time comes to make that mark, because they're people who don't just cast their ballot and then shove it away and forget about it for the next 5 years. It's people who read. So it's important, I mean, for me to vote and to take my family along is a personal thing, something that we fought hard for. And I want to engage and I want to do it. But at the same time, I mean, we need to be responsible as newspapers as well, and that's giving diverse views to people, to inform them. It's also about what we put on our front page, because we can't, 2 days before the election, have a hit from one party against another party. It's about being responsible in that space and almost taking your readers with you on a journey.
Thank you very much for that, gentlemen. I think on that note as well, it's very important that we as citizens out there make sure that we take the opportunity to inform ourselves, you know, read up, find out about, you know, what you're going to be doing, who you're going to be voting for, and most importantly, why you'll be voting them, where you see them taking the future of the country. We'll be right back on your Feel Good Breakfast Show.